New issue registration. A bit earlier, we talked about capital markets and the primary market. Well, new issues are sold in the primary market. We also talked about the fact that new issues must be registered with the SEC in accordance with the Securities Act of 1933. And we're going to registered with the SEC. New issues must be registered with the SEC. According to the Act of 33, the issuer must make full and fair disclosure of all material facts to potential investors, to people who are interested in buying or who buy the security. Now, this full and fair disclosure of material facts would be made by way of a prospectus. So a company is going to register a new issue with the SEC. They would work with an investment banker, an underwriter, to complete and file a registration statement with the SEC. Once that registration statement is filed, the new issue has entered a 20-day cooling off period, a minimum 20-day registration period. Now, might the cooling off period be extended beyond 20 days? Could and probably will. So the cooling off period is a minimum of 20 days. During this cooling off period, what's happening? During this cooling off period, the issuer and their lawyers are trying to determine all material facts as it relates to the new issue. They're doing what's known as their due diligence. What else is happening during the cooling off period? Well, the underwriter is contacting potential investors to find out what type of interest exists for this new issue. Now, how would we go about determining this level of interest? Well, one way we could do that is by advertising the new issue, advertising the potential new issue. This would be done by way of a tombstone ad. A broker-dealer could also call up potential investors. The underwriter, call up potential investors. Are you interested in buying this new issue? Yes, no, whatever. Now, the only thing that the underwriter can accept during the cooling off period would be indications of interest. No money could be accepted during the cooling off period. No money could be accepted during the cooling off period either. Now, those folks who have given an indication of interest are going to be provided with a preliminary prospectus known as a red herring. Now, it's known as a red herring because it's printed in red ink, and the preliminary prospectus is incomplete. We don't know what all the material facts are during the cooling off period, but that's when we use the preliminary prospectus. Therefore, this preliminary prospectus could and more than likely will omit material facts. Now, that's okay in the preliminary prospectus, but these material facts must not be omitted from the final prospectus. Final prospectus must include all material facts and must be available no later than the effective date of the new issue. Now, the effective date is the date that the new issue can be sold to the public. Shelf registration. Shelf registration. A company might want to register their new issue today, but they don't want to sell the new issue today. Maybe they don't feel that the market conditions are right to sell the new issue. They want to hold off on selling. Want to go ahead and get it registered, so we're ready to sell whenever we think market conditions are right. We could complete a shelf offering registration, registration statement, registration of this new issue would be effective for 3 years, so we would have 3 years to sell this new issue to the public when we feel market conditions are correct to do so, or to our advantage to do so. Maybe SEC has told us that our shelf offering registration is effective, and 12 months later, we believe now is the time to sell the new issue based on market conditions, based on pricing, so we sell in 12 months. That's the shelf offering registration. Now, some new issues must also be registered with the state, with NASA. If a new issue must be registered with the state, that new issue would be blue-skied. Now, state registration under the Uniform Securities Act, the USA, state registration under the Uniform Securities Act, the USA, blue-skying the new issue. State registration can be accomplished by coordination, qualification, or notice filing. Now, when would an issuer use coordination? If a company has got to register the new issue with the SEC and with the state, they would coordinate the registration of the new issue with both. So the issuer would complete a registration statement. They would file the registration statement with the SEC. They would coordinate a filing of the registration statement with the state. So we use coordination when there is an SEC registration and a state registration component. What if a new issue is not required to register with the SEC? Maybe a new issue is only required to be registered in the state. An example of that would be an intrastate offering, a new issue sold in one state only. Well, the new issue being sold in one state only, there would be no SEC registration requirement. Since we're not registering with the SEC, we're only registering with the state, there's no coordination of registration available. Therefore, we would register with the state using qualification. Again, the only time we would use coordination is if there is an SEC and state registration component. With an intrastate offering, one state only, there is no SEC registration component, only state registration required. That registration would be accomplished by way of qualification. And finally, notice filing. Under the Uniform Securities Act, there's a group of securities known as federally covered securities. These federally covered securities would register with the SEC, but they would be exempt from registration with the state. So the issuers of these federally covered securities would not be required to register the new issue with the state, but they would be required to notify the state that they're selling the new issue in the state, and that notification would be by way of notice filing.